All right, welcome everybody to the Iowa Community of Practice. This is Jessica Craho with the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment and a member of your Employment First leadership team. We're really excited to be back with you today, and we're hosting Ashlea Lantz on self-employment. Before I hand it over to her, a couple of housekeeping things. Your live captioning link can be found in the chat there, so please just click on that if you need it. We are recording today's session, and we'll be sure to share that along with the presentation and any additional materials out with the mailing list. If you're not a member of the mailing list and want to be, or you've got a team member that wants to be or should be, please just shoot us an email. I'll put my email there in the chat, but you can email me at pruittjess@gmail.com to get on the mailing list. And again, we always share any training opportunities that we have through the community of practice, all the recording and materials as well. And then if there's anything additional comes up, we like to share that through the mailing list. So it's good to have you on that, and you can participate when and where you can. We want to thank the DD Council and Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services for their continued support and investment in Employment First and in the community of practice. We are going on 6 years now, I believe, with the community of practice, which is amazing. And I think we've developed a really wonderful community that focuses on best practices in supported employment and customized employment. So it's just really exciting and good stuff, and always excited and happy to have you every month. So I think without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ashlea Lantz. And I know many of you know her, but she's a wonderful, wonderful friend and mentor here in Iowa to many of us. Many of us have worked with her. She was at Candeo and did supported employment and led a program there, and has been at Griffin-Hammis Associates now. Ashlea, for how long?
4 years,
right?
4 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Doing work still here in Iowa and all across the country around customized employment and benefits planning and self-employment. So we couldn't be luckier to have her here today with us. So Ashlea, without further ado, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. And thank you for the ever so kind introduction. If I can live up to half of that, I'll be good. It's a pleasure to be joining my Iowa colleagues today. So I hope you are all safe and well, and just taking care of yourselves in this very interesting season that we are in. So I'm excited to talk about self-employment with you today and kind of the different arms of owning in different capacities that lead to employment. So to just kind of check a knowledge check of where folks are at, and I think the ever so talented Jess might put up a poll. If not, we can just use the chat box. But how many of you have been self-employed?
Yes, and here, launching the poll now.
And then while you're at it, yes, also answer question 2. How many of you know someone who has been self-employed?
All right.
So far, 100% feedback on, now 92, as soon as I said that. So far, numbers coming in, about 29%, 30% of you have been self-employed, and about 70% of you have not been self-employed. And the big kicker, I think, is that 92% of you at least know someone who is self-employed, right? And only 2 of you don't know anyone who's self-employed. All of those are okay, right? But the idea is just that I think oftentimes we think of self-employment as this really niche thing that only a few people do, when in reality, self-employment makes up the biggest fabric of our businesses and our community. And even if we have personally never been self-employed, many of us are tied to people who do have self-employment experience. So just to kind of normalize it a little bit, and then hopefully at the end of our time today, you feel a little bit more confident in how that might apply to folks that you are supporting. So Thank you, Jess, for pulling that all together. All right, so what are we going to talk about in 45 to 50 minutes? One, I hope you feel like you can leave knowing how to identify how self-employment opportunities arise, and identify how discovery can lead to self-employment. And that's not the only way, but it's one of many, right? And then explain the three-legged stool of self-employment. And then we're going to identify and explain various types of ownership. So one of the things I think it's important to talk about first is, how do we get to self-employment, right? You hear stories of self-employment, but how did they get there? Like, did it just fall into their lap? How do we arrive at self-employment? So one of the ways is through discovery, right? And so whether you are part of a pilot project focusing on discovery, or you are delivering discovery services through an IVRS authorization for a couple of hours, but discovery, the idea of getting to know about who someone is and their interests, their talents, their contributions of employment, and then exploring that through informational interviews, identification of unmet needs, self-employment ideas can kind of present themselves. And so we'll talk a little bit about a few examples. Also through a waiver authorization, right? You might be delivering individualized supported employment, and through the use of informational interviews, you're identifying that there's an unmet need in your community that aligns with the skills, talents, and contributions that the job candidate that you're working with presents. More often than not, individuals and families are the push behind it, right? Which I think ties to item number 5 is passion, perseverance, and grit. So many of the self-employment stories that I hear often start off with a pissed off parent, to be totally frank. A parent that is frustrated and upset with the system, or what the system hasn't offered, or that there isn't a fit for their child or their family member that meets the contributions, that meets the conditions of employment for that person. And so as a result, we get to self-employment because it offers more control, it offers more customization. But at the same time, even if there's that desire, we still have to identify an unmet need in the community, and it still needs to align with the job candidate. So oftentimes I think 3, 4, and 5 kind of get stirred into a pot together. And then as employment professionals, we're able to help and support that momentum moving forward. So self-employment really is just, it's identified when a community need is not being met. So there has to be an unmet need, right? There has to be something that the community will benefit from. And at the same time, that has to align with the job candidate's skills, contributions, conditions, and talents, right? There's still the underlying focus of meeting the job candidate's needs. So how do we identify unmet needs? Well, great, Ashley. Like, I go and I do a couple of informational interviews, but how does that work? How do we get there? So through discovery, right? So the intent of discovery is that we're getting to know the job candidate, their interests, their skills, their passions, their conditions for employment. And sometimes, again, just as I had mentioned before, that those conditions can kind of drive the momentum for self-employment through informational interviews. So you're talking with businesses, and maybe you hear from business ABC that they could use a product or a service that's not being delivered locally. So when we're talking about informational interviews and mining the supply chain, asking what other businesses might they work with, or do they receive product from, or if they could invest in something, say they had an extra $5,000, how would you spend that, Mr. Business? And all of those questions are kind of exploring unmet needs, right? And sometimes the unmet need can be met by creating a self-employment opportunity. Also, identifying vocational themes. So for some of you, I believe you're participating in the Voc Rehab pilot project. That's a kind of a bit more of a larger focus on discovery, right? Where we're using a different authorization, there's more hours, and there's a big focus on identifying vocational themes, which a vocational theme just means a big overarching concept, right? So a vocational theme of helping others might be agriculture or animals, or I think we've actually done a few community of practices on themes. So maybe we can also tie that when we send that out. But identifying a vocational theme and then conducting informational interviews and connecting with businesses in those vocational themes, again, that presents sometimes unmet needs. And then research and conversation, which doesn't have to be formal. It really, more often or not, I think when those conversations are organic and you're just genuinely interested in the business and learning and seeking advice, where we don't go in with an idea of a specific job description that the job candidate might fit, that's when sometimes we can also identify those unmet needs that can present self-employment opportunities. So what are the outcomes of discovery and individualized supported employment, right? Like the top two are pretty known, right? Wage employment and customized employment, where maybe you've customized the fit, right? But it's still a wage position. And then there are these other ones that we don't talk about so often, but I feel like in our season of a pandemic, that these opportunities have more opportunity than ever, right? Because they really are focused on supporting the community and supporting the business and the individual at the same time. So supported self-employment. So my sister M, who owns M's Coffee Company in Independence, is a supported self-employment story, right? So she is self-employed, she owns her own business, but she has support. She has full-time job coaching and support from family members that help her in operating her business. Also a micro enterprise, so fewer than 6 employees. Oftentimes it might even be 1 employee or 2 employees. Resource ownership, which is not business ownership, but somebody's owning a piece of equipment that benefits the business. And we'll talk about each of these a little bit more. And then finally, a business within a business, where the person owns their own business, but operates out of a host business. So these are all options that we can explore. One of the things that I hope that you take away today is this idea of a 3-legged stool, and that each of these legs have to be present when we're exploring self-employment. So if you're working with a job candidate, or really any of the opportunities that we're going to talk about, but one, and to go back to the stool, if one of those legs are missing, the stool can't stand. And that goes for the same concept of, if one of these legs are missing in the self-employment opportunity, it's not going to work out. And I've seen it on both where it does work out and where it doesn't work out. And it's because one of these legs are not present. So one, it has to fit the person. It has to fit the job candidate, right? That's bottom line of what we're all about. 2, the business idea has to be feasible. It has to benefit the community, right? It has to generate income for the person, and the right supports have to be available. So let's dig into each of these. So as you're working with someone, you could just print out these slides and put them in a folder. And then when an opportunity arises where you're exploring ownership for someone, you could just kind of ask these questions as benchmarks. So 1, does it fit the person? So does the business concept align with everything that you've learned in discovery or supported employment around the contributions of the person, their skills, their abilities, and most of all, their conditions of employment? Self-employment is a ton of work. So it really, to make it worth it, it's got to meet all of these things. Also, is the individual and the team focused on success, right? The business concept isn't going to be stronger than the individual's passion for the project, for the employment. So it can't be more about you wanting to make it successful than the job candidate making it successful, right? So is the team focused on making this happen? And are the team members self-motivated? So by no way means that someone has to have an entrepreneurial mindset or has to be able to do 100% of the business. It just means, are they motivated? Things get bumpy in the process of self-employment. There are barriers, there's speed bumps, there's things where you think it's going to go one way and it goes another direction. So are you motivated to keep that going? And is there this, again, overarching desire for success, right? And that's where those pissed off parents come in, because if you are better to jump on their boat, to jump on their train and to see that through, because there's an overarching desire for success for their child. And so let's not get in the way of that, and let's jump on the bandwagon, right? So I think oftentimes it's because anything other than success is not an option, right? So you're looking for that motivation, that drive. And then again, business ownership can be difficult. And it's a benefit for the individual, the job candidate, to make sure that they have unpaid support, meaning family members, friends, who are the people that aren't going to leave their side when stuff gets hard. Because the reality is, VR counselors, CRPs, we are paid to be in someone's life, right? So if you aren't going to be paid, or funding runs out, or if one of those hiccups impacts you being paid, does that impact you delivering service, right? So it's really important that someone has that unpaid support in some capacity around them. 2, is the business idea feasible, right? So how is the business going to make money? We go into business to make money, right? And it's the same reason for the job candidate as well. So how will the business benefit the community? There has to be some sort of community need. And then what research has been done to validate that that's needed? So one of the top things that we always say to do, if you're exploring self-employment and you want to test the concept, our number one recommendation is to sell a few. Is anybody going to buy your product? So if that's possible, if you can sell a few items, great. Like I had a conversation with a parent one time who shared that his child was making giant Jenga sets, right? And so he had already taken one step, and that they had taken it to craft shows, and they were selling like crazy. So that concept works. So trying and selling a few things, but also talking to community leaders, talking to experts. 92% of you know someone who is self-employed. So if you are working with a job candidate, each of you know someone that you could reach out to and say, talk to me about what it's like to be self-employed. And has the individual tested the business concept? So I already talked about that, and the idea of selling a few things. 3rd, and I think they're all important, but the right support for the individual has to be present. So does the business meet the individual's support needs, right? Does it meet the conditions of employment for the individual? And that could include having access to support staff, whether that's using a consumer choices option model, if that's as a CRP and you're providing job coaching, what creative resources and funding mechanisms. And I can tell you right now, with all of these scenarios, there isn't a funding mechanism where you're going to read it and say, that's exactly where it fits. All of these options require lots and lots of communication as a team, and connecting with this pool, this community that we have, to say, who can I talk to? Who do I need? Who needs to be part of that team? But are the right people on the person's team, right? And we'll talk about a few examples of who you might want to include on that team. And I think also just knowing that you don't have to be the expert, but as the employment specialist, you might be helping facilitate meetings, bringing people together, and keeping that momentum moving. And then most of all, does the person have access to certified benefits planning, which is absolutely necessary in all of these scenarios. So contacting Misty and Tammy with the Iowa Work Incentive Planning and Assistance Project. If you have certified benefits planning within your organization, fantastic. VR also has local experts in their regions as well. So just making sure that you have a benefits planner is really also a necessary support. So here's the example of M. And for those of you who don't know, M is my sister, in full disclosure, or I'm M's sister is a much better title for me. But M, and I tell this story not just because she's my sister, but it's because it's the self-employment story I've been most intimately involved with, and know almost every crook and cranny of her story. So, and for M, self-employment really became an option when nothing else fit. So, participating in the facility-based setting wasn't a good fit for M. Yet the idea of not having a lot of supported employment supports in the small town of Independence 10, 12, 11 years ago impacted that decision as well. And that M would struggle to compete with a job description. And so that kind of organically started getting pulled together when there weren't any other options. And so it was, who knows M best, and how can we just have a conversation about what employment might look like, because her not working was also not an option. So when the team, in meetings, and I say team really informally, it was family members, it was friends, it was her support staff, and it was just talking about like, what would be a good fit for him? What does the town of Independence need? And so know that not all ideas are good ideas. So oftentimes the first ideas were, ooh, a thrift store, right? Because oftentimes, how many times do we associate a thrift store with people with disabilities working at a thrift store, right? And so the town of Independence had multiple thrift stores. That wasn't something that one was going to be a good fit for M, or two, a good fit for the community. Thinking about, oh, well, maybe she could sell trinkets. We associate ideas with what we've experienced or know, right? And so oftentimes those are your first handful of ideas. And then the idea started about a coffee shop. Well, Independence doesn't have a coffee shop. It used to have a coffee shop. Well, would that fit M? And so it just started kind of snowballing. So those conversations are really important as to where that concept gets started. And so think about that, the three-legged stool, as we kind of continue the story of M here. So if we think about M's vocational themes, two that are just blaring for her is people, right? If you've ever been to an Iowa APSE conference, she is very effective at hunting people down and luring them in and buying coffee and buying t-shirts, and she's a natural saleswoman. She loves people. She also loves helping people and children, right? So helping others, people, children, all of these things are things that M just kind of naturally gravitates to. She's great at connecting with others. She has a strong memory for names, details about people, asking about their children, and she's best in the morning. So she's always been a morning person, right? So imagine these things coming up in conversation as we're planning for self-employment, right? And so then conditions for her, she needs to make her own schedule. It's got to be flexible. It needs to be with other people. It has to be a positive work environment. She's going to struggle to compete with a traditional job description. And the idea that our family comes from a self-employed family. So the idea of self-employment wasn't scary, right? So it gets driven again by family members saying, well, unemployment is not an option. And since there's nothing else, let's explore self-employment. So looking at the fit, the feasibility and support, did it fit M? Yes. The concept of waking up early, serving her community, in an informal environment of a coffee shop. The town of Independence didn't have a coffee shop, so it fit that need. And so those conversations started culminating in figuring out, okay, well, yeah, and past coffee shops could maybe donate items. Maybe they're not using the espresso machine, or it happens organically, right? But most of all, does the community need it, and who will support her, and does it fit M? So let's look at an example, and I want to, we have a lot to go through. So is David a good candidate for self-employment? So his themes, again, we're thinking in vocational themes. So an overarching theme of animals, crafts, woodworking and leatherwork, construction, building things. His skills are his physical strength. He has great fine motor skills. He uses woodworking and leatherworking tools. He drives, he has strong verbal communication. His conditions of employment are limited lifting due to a back injury. He has limited interactions with the public. He has a flexible schedule, or he needs a flexible schedule. So good days, bad days, and being able to kind of choose when he works. His supports, he has support from VR, IPS supported employment. He also is a PASS candidate, and we'll talk about that in a second, but that's a very good thing. And his family sells products at flea markets. So in general, do you think that David might be a good candidate for self-employment? Maybe we can just use the chat feature. Yes, Misty, excellent. I'm so glad you're here since I just told people to come find you. Yeah, Jan, excellent. Danny, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, and I know that it's hard to sum all of that up into a slide and say, oh, if you have this information, go pursue self-employment. But just knowing that that's a possibility, right? And it's oftentimes worth exploring. And just know that Iowa is such a rich community full of excellent team members to pull onto a self-employment team, and that it's very possible and very doable. And that you don't have to be the expert. You just need to know who do we pull together for the team. So that's a big self-employment example. I want to talk about a business within a business. So still self-employment, the individual owns their own business. So I might have a sole proprietorship. I'm going to own Ashlea's ice cream, but I'm going to operate within a host business. So meaning I'm not going to have as much overhead because I'm going to operate within somebody else's business. So it's a business within a business. And then the individual and the business oftentimes have a written agreement. Typically that might include rent or a financial agreement or what that might look like, right? So there's a lot of planning that's involved, but that's another concept, right, of a business within a business. So what might be some examples? I think the best known example that we oftentimes probably don't think about, but Best Buy, Geek Squad houses within the host business of Best Buy. They're separate entities, or the Geek Squad is a subsidiary of Best Buy, but it benefits, it's mutually beneficial for both businesses, right? Best Buy sells electronics, the Geek Squad can come and fix them. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. It could also be homemade ice cream in a cafe. So as you're doing informational interviews, sometimes you might hear, oh yeah, we've always been interested in offering X, or we've always been interested in offering in-house ice cream, but we just have never been able to do that. Oh, well, I'm working with a guy who's really interested in, making his own ice cream, or having a conversation. It happens, it's not a one and done conversation, right? It's constantly kind of coming back and refining that conversation. And if that's something that you'd like more details, support with, know that anyone from Griffin-Hammis would be happy to help, as well as other self-employment experts within the state of Iowa. So one person that I worked with, pony rentals almost became her business within a business. And this is an example where we thought all of the legs of the stool were there. So the business concept was feasible. It was a good fit for the job candidate, but she didn't have the support outside of her provider organization. And there was a lot of work that went into developing the concept, to developing the business within a business. Financial projections were made, and then because the family, it was beyond just family, but because there wasn't the support beyond the CRP, the concept ended up fizzling out. But the business concept was that she was going to own her own pony. And there was this Princess Party organization that really wanted to have this unicorn that went along with the princesses, because it would add benefit to their parties. It oftentimes had been requested. All of this information was found out in the informational interview, and that no one in that region was providing that service. And the Princess Party place didn't necessarily want to get into the business of owning ponies, but the job candidate that we were working with, that was one of her overarching vocational themes, was that she loved equine, all things equine, right? And she had some skills around it as well. So that's how it kind of funnels through, is those conversations. And then you start saying, well, what if, and maybe this could be an idea, and let's pursue this further. And it all just kind of happens through conversation and refining research. So now we're going to flip to another opportunity, which is resource ownership. And I think we are prime to explore resource ownership with folks. And we oftentimes forget that it exists. And it's not necessarily, the job candidate is not self-employed, but I think it still fits here. But the job candidate purchases equipment or tools that bring benefit to the business and to the job candidate, right? So any of you who went to college and spent $30,000 on a college degree, that's resource ownership, right? It's a piece of paper that you take to your business and say that I'm qualified for this job because I've invested in this, in my education, right? So that can also be, I'm investing in equipment or tools that benefit the business, right? So the business hires and pays a commensurate hourly wage or salary to the supported employee. And there's a written agreement between the business and the supported employee on the use of the tools or equipment. So we'll talk about a few examples. And oftentimes we stray away from saying the word contract because that can kind of freak folks out a bit, but it's more just a written mutual agreement between the business and the employee on the use of the tools or the equipment. So what if you were working on an agreement around resource ownership, what might that look like? So you'd want to provide a quick background of the scenario. And again, I want to preface that you have probably been refining and participating in this relationship with a business for 3, 4, 5 months, right? Of identifying the unmet need, exploring whether or not this would be a benefit for the business, right? It's not, hey, one informational interview and we've now jumped into resource ownership, right? So a quick background though, a summary of kind of how you've got there. What are going to be the benefits to the business, right? So oftentimes when we're thinking about resource ownership, there should be an increase of production or an increase in sales or revenue. How is this going to financially benefit the business? And you'll find that information out through the use of informational interviews, through a job analysis, through all of those tools that you already know how to do and exist. So proposed job duties of the agreement or of using the equipment. So what is it that Joe might be doing as part of his role? What piece of equipment is he bringing? What are the proposed hours and wages for the job candidate? And then the timeline. So, you know, Joe's going to purchase this piece of equipment. He'll be hired and the equipment will be used, you know, from this date to whenever, right? So in this scenario of resource ownership, if something happens to, something happens to Joe's job, that equipment goes with him. The business does not own it. It is Joe's equipment and he's bringing it to the benefit of the business and also to the benefit of him. And also in scenarios that also result in a stronger job retention too, right? That it's a benefit to the business. There's no pity hire here. It is a benefit to the job candidate and the business because it increases production, it increases revenue. It is a good business practice. So what would be some examples of resource ownership? A pet grooming lift for a pet salon. So maybe you are working with someone who has a vocational theme of animals and you start talking to pet salons. And one of the things that would really enhance their business is if they had a lift to groom pets. And that's something that, you know, oh, if you had an extra $5,000, how might you spend that right now? What would be, or what's your next investment for your business and what that looks like? It could be an espresso machine in a car shop. It could be a value, because that would be value added service, right? If I could go get my car worked on and also get a really nice espresso drink at the same time and not just the little instant coffee. It could be an ice cream machine in a small cafe. It could be a screen printer in a printing company. Really, the opportunities are endless, right? It's just figuring out what matches the job candidate and what is the unmet need at the business. So here's an example. Our colleague Corey worked with Hunter here, and Hunter is a passionate artist. He was able to use a pass plan, which we'll talk more in a minute, but just write down Misty and Tammy's names and they can help you with that. I'd be happy to help you as well. So he was able to use a pass to help him purchase the equipment. And again, we'll get there. So how do I help somebody purchase the equipment? And then the printer, what did it benefit for the business? The printer increased the revenue for the screen printing company. So, you know, they're doing an informational interview. They learn from this business that they can't keep up with printing. You know, they're always behind on orders. They've had to turn orders away. So if you had an additional printer and increase your custom orders, you know, would that be a benefit to your business? Well, gee, yeah, that'd be, you know, an incredible addition to our business? Well, Hunter here actually has some resources where he could purchase equipment to benefit himself and a business. And Hunter, as you know, is super passionate about being an artist, creating his own materials. Would that be a benefit if, Hunter had a printer and you hired Hunter as one of your employees? Everybody could use the printer, but it's owned by Hunter. What would that be like? Would you be interested in that? So, and here, if you want to click on the YouTube link outside of this presentation, there's a small little video about Hunter. But that's an example of resource ownership. And I think right now, more than ever, businesses are primed to customize, because in this COVID-19 world, every business has customized something in the last 3 to 4 months, right? So customization is possible, and businesses are willing to do it. And here, I think, is this opportunity to support community, to support business, and to support our job candidates in thinking about employment differently, about the overwhelming thought of competing with a job description right now. But that seems really overwhelming to me. However, the idea of supporting businesses and job candidates through the opportunities of resource ownership, I think, is a different spin, and something that we can be focusing on right now. So if I was operating an employment program right now, I would be looking at who are we supporting that already has resources available for a PASS plan. And we'll talk about that more on the next slide, actually. So resources and support. So let's talk about the opportunity for a PASS. So again, if I was running an employment organization right now, one, you always want to be collecting what benefits a person receives, so that that's part of that service, right? Because we know that benefits oftentimes get in the way, or lack thereof information. So a PASS plan, if I'm receiving, I would want to know who are we supporting that is a concurrent beneficiary. A concurrent beneficiary means someone is receiving SSDI or a Title II benefit and SSI at the same time. So if someone says, I received 2 checks, and and say you're going through discovery and there's maybe this opportunity for resource ownership, or just identifying this person has resources that they could set aside for an employment goal, right? So a PASS can be used for education, it can be used for equipment, it can be used for self-employment in the first 2 years of business, it can be used for a variety of things. But it's a way to save money, to save resources for an employment goal. So, and if you're interested in more information about PASS, please, please, please reach out to Tammy, Misty, or myself. And maybe this could be a future topic. But the idea is that if you're following me just for a second, that if someone is a concurrent beneficiary, so if I receive SSDI and SSI at the same time, a PASS plan allows me to set aside my SSDI check minus $20. We're not going to get into the details of that, but just know if I have a SSDI check of $420, I can set $400 a month aside in the bank. Then my SSI check is going to go up, because if I receive my full SSDI check, my SSI check is going to be smaller. However, if I have an approved PASS plan to purchase equipment for a business, then I'm going to set aside that SSDI check, and my SSI is going to increase. So oftentimes I'm still living on the same amount of money, but I'm setting aside resources. So the reason I say, if you're running an employment program, look at anyone who's a concurrent beneficiary, because essentially they have resources that they could be saving for an employment goal that oftentimes are unused, more often than not unused. And so a PASS plan is a way to save money for those resources, and that could be used for resource ownership. So for the example of Hunter, he used a PASS plan to be able to purchase the screen printer. And at Griffin-Hammis, we have a fun pot of money that can be used to help purchase the equipment right away, and then use the PASS plan to pay a bank back. So for Hunter, he was able to purchase that equipment right away, and benefit him and the business, and be hired, and then pay that off through the PASS plan, if that makes sense. So again, with the PASS plan, don't be overwhelmed by it. Just know, who do I need to reach out to for support? So again, Iowa, WIPA, Misty, Tammy, you could reach out to myself. Also, Susie Paulson and the benefits planner gurus at your local VR office, if you know who that is, in your specific region. Also, if you have a certified benefits planner in-house, that's something that can be done as well. So a PASS plan does require an application. It doesn't have to be scary. It can be used for wage employment or self-employment. It can be used for resource ownership. It's time limited. So I can only, oftentimes, I'm writing a PASS plan for 2 years, maybe 3 years. It requires the applicant to set aside their own income or resources. So that could be my SSDI check minus that $20. Also, it could be additional resources. And so doing so, by having a PASS plan, it has to increase, it increases the SSI payment that we had talked about. So here, I got ahead of myself. So if you use a PASS, it has to reduce the reliance on SSI or support the individual in having earnings over substantial gainful activity. So Social Security Administration puts this tool out there, but says, if we're gonna let you set money aside, we just want you to, the goal is for you to be less reliant on those benefits, right? So again, we're not gonna get into the details. I just want you to know that that resource exists, and it's oftentimes unused. And there are hundreds of thousands of dollars that could be used and saved for equipment or school or self-employment, but oftentimes we just forget to explore that resource. With the PASS application, again, the work goal's got to be specific. It goes over education and work history, the steps to reach your goal. It's kind of like the business plan for making the PASS plan happen. So it's very detailed. Again, you don't have to do it on your own. Just know who to reach out to for support in exploring a PASS. The other resource is Voc Rehab, right? So oftentimes if you're supporting a job candidate, there's a Voc Rehab counselor that's also involved. And it's not something where you're going to be able to go and look up, the VR policy around self-employment really quick, or micro enterprise or resource ownership. It's not that easy, right? It's always individualized. And knowing that if you're having regular communication with the VR counselor and saying, we had this during discovery, we're learning about the conditions of employment. The family is really invested in exploring self-employment. We're learning about these unmet needs. This business is, really interested in this, and presenting that information through regular communication, through brainstorming with the counselor, that VR can be a partner, right? So it just oftentimes, it can't be something where you're like, hey, knock, knock, VR counselor, we have a self-employment opportunity. Where's the money? That doesn't go over well, right? But regular communication, brainstorming, working collaboratively, pulling in a team of people does work well. And so, and VR also has a self-employment program, a micro enterprise program, and those supports are there and available. And I just can't stress enough that it's a collaborative effort and not necessarily a sole resource where you just say, hey, where's the money? But it's a team effort, and it's done in collaboration with one another. So I want to use M's team as an example of a team, right? Because the other part about self-employment is that team of people evolves with the process. So whether it's resource ownership, a business within a business, whatever it is, but that team is there to really support the person in throughout the life of the business, right? So for M, initially, it was parents, friends, family who knew her really, really well, those unpaid people in her life. Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation was a partner as well. And so, and again, that partnership wasn't always easy initially because it was exploring what works, what doesn't work, what fits, what doesn't fit. But it ended up being a really supportive and prosperous relationship through that conversation, through those collaborative efforts. Also, Medicaid and the HCBS waiver, experts from Medicaid were part of her team to say, how does this look for self-employment? Again, I think self-employment, we stray away from it because there aren't always specific rules that say, here's how it works. But don't let those get in the way, right? There's an exception to every rule. There's all sorts of people that are part of this community of practice where you could reach out and say, hey, I'm supporting someone with self-employment, but I'm not sure what to do here. Or how does this fit with Medicaid? Or how does this fit with VR? And we pull in those experts around the team to say, let's talk about it. Let's explore it. And then there's networking in the community. So connecting with business owners in the community, people who've either done that line of business before or are experts and can say, give you some insight as far as what it's like to be self-employed. And then also certified benefits planning. I can't say this enough. If someone is exploring any of these options and they receive SSI or Title II SSDI or any of the above benefits, please, 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 please reach out to the folks at WIPA or Certified Benefits Planner, because all of the rules around self-employment are different. They're all manageable. They're all worth exploring. Just make sure that you're not putting all of the weight on yourself as the employment specialist. And then there's always kind of this partner you never expect that kind of comes out of nowhere, I think, for a lot of people. And that also comes through networking in the community and saying, hey, we're exploring this. The Iowa Department of Natural Resources actually provided a grant to because she was serving up local products. So there's always these really specific community grants that aren't necessarily anything with disability, but you don't know they exist unless you're having those conversations and unless you're just connecting with people and saying, hey, this is something that we're exploring. What do you know about this? And then you use the team to try and help figure out where those resources are, where those pockets of money are to support the idea and the business venture. So I think one of the main roles around being an employment specialist that might participate in someone's self-employment success or resource ownership is helping identify who needs to be part of the team. So if you're working with an individual and a family, sharing, is VR part of the team yet? If not, let's pull them in. Let's have a conversation with VR. If there is a CRP or there's not a CRP present and you're the family member considering consumer choices options or connecting with someone who is an expert around Medicaid services and long-term supports and pulling them in to have that conversation. Utilizing your own local resources through the Small Business Development Center. Oftentimes they have business professionals that can help write business plans, help sift through feasibility, give you ideas around feasibility studies. Also, SCORE is a group of retired self-employed professionals that can also provide mentoring and support that is nationwide. Connecting with industry experts. So again, all of you said that you know someone, except for two of you, and I'm sure the rest of us would be happy to help guide you into someone, to have a conversation with someone who is self-employed. Again, connecting with the Iowa Work Incentive Planning and Assistance folks. Again, that is Tammy and Misty, and they can serve the entire state. So please use them as a resource as well. So what's the role of the employment specialist? Again, you see opportunity, right? See possibility, see the unknown and say, well, let's maybe explore this. Let's see what happens. Explore benefits information. So again, even if you went back today to your team and said, let's look at anyone who's a concurrent beneficiary. And that doesn't mean that you have to call them tomorrow and say, hey, you're a concurrent beneficiary, you've won the lottery, you're sitting on resources that could be used for an employment goal. It doesn't have to be that, right? But understanding that that resource is potentially on the table gives you more room for negotiation and exploration into possibilities. To facilitate the process, identify the team. If the team is moving in the direction of self-employment or resource ownership, who are the people that we need to have on board? To delegate responsibilities, if there are team members that, who knows who in the community and who can go have those conversations. And most of all, to support the prospective business owner or the prospective job candidate who's exploring resource ownership. But ultimately, all of our role is to support the folks that we have the opportunity to work with. So I wrap it all up with, I think, what I find is this great Steve Jobs quote, that you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, whether that be your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down, and it's made all of the difference in my life. And I think sometimes as employment professionals, we want to connect the dots looking forward. We want to know where we're going or what job description somebody's going to fit in. And this process oftentimes is just trusting in the unknown, or trusting our gut and saying, let's have this conversation. Let's explore this. Let's see what the possibilities are. And the worst thing is people might say no, or they might say yes. And that might result in an incredible employment opportunity for the job candidate that you're working with. So it's amazing how quickly 50 minutes goes by with you all every time. I think we have a couple of minutes for questions. And yeah, I think if there is interest in exploring self-employment further, or being trained further in self-employment, that's something worth having a conversation about. It's hard to plug everything into 15 minutes, or 50 minutes, excuse me. So.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashlea. Let's see if we've got any questions coming in here. I'll give you a minute or two to think. And I wonder why we have folks there too. You know, if was there any part of the presentation today that would be of value to dive deeper into, that you might like to hear more about? I know we talked about the possibility of a pass, but you know, August is our last community of practice, and we'll be planning for the upcoming year. So, you know, it would be a great time to, if there's anything from today that you'd like us to expand on or spend some more time on, that would be helpful to know. So some of the comments coming in: great information, great stuff. Can you send a copy? Yeah. Absolutely, we'll send a copy of the PowerPoint. Ash, do you want to take a minute to talk to us a little bit about, you know, we talked about the value of a team and self-employment, maybe about the value of building a team when it comes to supported employment and more customized employment, right? I mean, it's not too different than what we talked about today, right? But
yeah.
I think maybe that's something we tend to overlook. We think, well, I'm the employment specialist and I'm working with my job candidate, and maybe I'm partnered up with a VR counselor on this, but maybe we don't always go beyond that team. And we should, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I think the biggest myth for employment specialists, or one of them, is that you have to do it by yourself.
Yes.
And having been there, is, you know, I carried that same feeling, and we don't have to do it alone. I think that, yes, you have the authorization in your hand and are being paid for the service delivery, but realizing that there are oftentimes a cadre of people who want to help, or who are interested in helping, but oftentimes just don't know how to help. And so I think as an employment specialist, being a guide and being a good steward of people's time. But one of the cool things, I think that, you know, we're all in a world that we've never experienced before, but connecting virtually, you can pull a team together, whether that's for job development or whatever stage of employment someone is in, pulling together a Zoom call with anyone who's interested in supporting this person and saying, here's what we know so far. If it's for job development, what are things that we could be exploring? What are things that we could be doing? How is Joe spending his time? Who are people I could talk to that could give me more information on who he is? Or, you know, his themes are in animals, agriculture, and music. Who is part of this team knows anybody who works in any of those facets, right? And it doesn't, the great thing about Zoom is somebody could say, oh, well, my brother's an expert in agriculture, but he lives in Illinois. Well, let's set up a Zoom call and just learn about agriculture, right? Because there are always things that we don't know that existed. And so oftentimes it's talking to experts. We had a call around the Discovery Fidelity Scale, and our colleague Steve brought up, there was this person who really liked ripping and shredding things. And he goes, well, gee, somebody just laid my grass the other day. And before they did, there's this new technique of like, they're shredding something that then goes on your grass. He's like, they were shredding more things than I've ever, seen. So it's those conversations that I think evolve in a team environment where we say, well, gee, I had no idea that existed. So use this opportunity to connect virtually with teams, pull together a Zoom call, and just have a few guiding points and see where it goes.
Awesome.
Hopefully that got to what you were hoping.
No, absolutely. You nailed it. You right from the beginning, that it's a myth that you have to do it alone and that you have to have all the answers right away. So great.
Yeah, it's no fun doing it alone.
No.
It stinks doing it alone. Don't do it alone. Pull together a team. I think a good example, hopefully they don't mind me calling them out, but I think New Hope Village does it really well, where the employment specialists, my understanding, all work together as a team. They all know the job candidates that each other is working with, and they I think do a really nice job of collaborating and supporting one another in that process.
Yes, absolutely. All right.
We're all in together.
We are.
Disney song, y'all.
Right. And the yard signs that tell us so, right? That's good stuff. No, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you, Ashley, so much for your time today and all the great information and sharing of your expertise in this area. I do think there's some pieces in this that we can maybe pull out and slate for next year's community of practice to dive a little deeper into. Just really good stuff.
Maybe pulling up a PASS, right? Like a PASS plan, and like, how do you write a PASS plan? Like really diving in and, not to totally just say, hey, Misty and Tammy, but pulling it, and really focusing on how do you write a PASS plan?
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. Please share your ideas and feedback on the evaluation survey. I've included the link there for you in the chat. We always appreciate that. So give us feedback on today's webinar, but also it gives you an opportunity to give us some feedback for future webinars, any recommendations or ideas for topics. We always appreciate hearing that. I will be sure to share Ashley's PowerPoint or the slides to the mailing list after today's webinar. Along with the recording. We will be back Tuesday, August 18th at 1 p.m. for our last community of practice of the year. We have slated Leanne Moskowitz and Lynn Niblick. They're going to talk to us about DayHab. There were some updates to the DayHab rules, and though those aren't final or accepted into oh, now I lost my word. Iowa code now. They're not in code yet, but we're working on it. It's going to be there soon. But I think they would like to give a kind of an update on kind of what that looks like and what the plan is for the future. But then we'll also have Leanne available to us, and again, her expertise to kind of talk to us about what's going on in the Medicaid world right now and around HCBS and kind of this idea that we've had to provide services differently during this national health crisis, during the pandemic, and kind of what does that look like, and what does she kind of see on the horizon there, or what do we know that might be staying the same or changing as we wrap up the summer and head into the fall. So she'll be able to talk to us about that too. So we'll kind of have a hybrid discussion that day, if you will. So please bring your questions with you. You can send those on ahead to me if you would like. Also, before the webinar, I did not share my email with you. So let me do that more. Let me do that. Talk and type. Okay. So if you would like to be on the mailing list, just give me an email there. If you would like a certificate of attendance for participating in today's webinar, also use that same email. And if you have any questions for Leanne, send those on to me as well, and I can funnel those to her ahead of time so she can address those ahead of August's webinar. Again, thank you, Ashley. Thank you to Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services and the DD Council for their support and investment in the community of practice. And we will be back in August. Thanks, everybody. Have a really great rest of the week and be safe and well. Thanks again, Ash.
Thanks.
Thanks.